Hey, I'm Jason Garrison from CincyJungle.com. I'm here with Anthony Cosenza. We're using Google Hangout to talk face-to-face, even though I'm in Ohio and he's in California. What's the temperature there today?
Actually, it's going to be 80 today.
Oh, well, okay. Because it's
Seriously.
snowing. It's snowing here. It's snowing here.
Oh,
So that
wow.
really sucks. No, I'm sick of the weather here. But even though it's the off season, there's plenty to talk about. Joe Flacco just signed with the Ravens, and the Bengals use their franchise tag, and the NFL Combine just came to an end. It was this past weekend, and I was lucky enough to be able to go to Indianapolis for it. So, but we can just go ahead and start with the Combine. It was at Lucas Oil Stadium. It started last Wednesday and went through Tuesday. It was 4 days of media access where first it was offensive linemen and tight ends kind of cycled through the media room and answered questions. Every single coach, well, not every coach, but most coaches and general managers came in and answered questions. And then it was quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and then defensive linemen, linebackers, and finally defensive backs. So I got a good chance to talk with a lot of the players that the Bengals seem to be interested in, or that the mock draft said they should be interested in. I got to sit in on Marvin Lewis's press conference, so it was really a great experience. And I know, Anthony, I think that you said you had some questions, so shoot.
Well, first of all, I'm very envious that you were able to make it there. That's something I always wanted to do, but I'm glad that you were able to do that, and you did an awesome job providing our site with some good updates. And a little shout out to, Bengals.com, Jeff Hobson, and Cincinnati Enquirer's Joe Reedy, because you said they helped you out quite a bit. So that was pretty cool that they did that. What are some guys at those positions that either you spoke to or you saw their workouts that maybe stood out to you? You know, there's a couple guys obviously that have been linked numerous times to the Bengals. Alec Ogletree is one. Kenny Vaccaro is another, the safety from Texas. Jonathan Franklin, the running back from UCLA, has kind of been talked about a little bit. So maybe some of those guys and other guys that you saw that maybe impressed you a little bit since you saw them face to face, either their workouts and or their interviews.
Well, it's funny. I didn't get to see Jonathan Franklin. I wanted to see Jonathan Franklin. I didn't get to talk to him. The guys that I was most impressed with from talking to face to face are the guys that most Bengals fans want us to have nothing to do with. Monty Ball was incredible face to face. You know, he seems like a real pro. He talked about how what he'll bring to a team is accountability and reliability. You know, at the running back position, how he's carried the ball over 900 times. He's only had 2 fumbles, and he said that he was just really impressive. You know, really impressive interview. Really, seems to have his head on his shoulders. And the same goes for Arthur Brown, linebacker out of Kansas State. He seems like a real pro as well. You know, and he talked about his versatility. He thinks he can play strong side, weak side, middle linebacker, whatever the case may be. However, Brown isn't nearly as physically big as Alec Ogletree. Ogletree is a big kid, and he's also fast. I know, he plays sideline to sideline very well. So when it comes to Sam, one thing that Joe Reedy and I talked about in that last video that we did before I left was that Ogletree seems to be able to be he could probably play Sam backer in a 4-3 defense. Arthur Brown might not have the size to do something like that. Eddie Lacy was impressive, and he looks like a truck with legs. He's a big running back. He was impressive. Giovanni Bernard, I actually got some just one-on-one time with him to talk about the Bengals and whether he thought he could carry the load in the AFC North, and he said he could. He was impressive. When it comes to Kenny Vaccaro, I asked all the top safeties if they thought they were the best safety in the NFL draft class. Everyone said absolutely yes. I'm the best safety in the history of safeties. Kenny Vaccaro is the only one that said, he didn't say no, but he just said, I think I bring the most to the table. So it was just, humbling a little bit. The thing is, though, that all these players, their answers are all canned. They have so much like training now, how to deal with the media, how to, they say what they they say what you want to hear, which is it's just like a job interview. It's what you would do with any job interview. So it's hard to get a really great it's hard to get a really great feel for how these guys really are, especially, you know what I mean, just because they know what you're going to ask. You know, Alec Ogletree was asked a lot about the DUI. He got a couple weeks before the Combine, and he just said, you know, I made a mistake, and I'm not going to make it again, and I've had to grow up. And, you know, he said exactly what you would say to any guy who asks you something like that. And the same goes for Manti Te'o. I mean, he was just bombarded with questions about his the hoax about the fake girlfriend that he had. And one of the questions was actually, do you have a girlfriend in real life? And you almost felt bad for him because the guy wanted to talk about football, and he just can't. And he might not be able to talk about football for a really long time. You know, he's probably going to be dealing with jokes about this for, God, I don't know, maybe, you know, quite possibly the rest of his career. But, you know, he handled himself really well and just said, you know, there's not much to say. I'm sorry that I embarrassed my family and blah, blah, blah. You know, he just canned answers. But so everyone was impressive just because they have to be. When it comes to on-field workouts, Monty Ball was a little bit slow. I think he ran a 4.66 or 4.67. But that's the same speed that Arian Foster ran, that kind of speed, and Alfred Morris ran that kind of speed last year. And, you know, those guys have had great success in the NFL. Mm-hmm. You know, I wish I could have seen Eddie Lacy run, but, you know, he didn't run just because I think he hurt his hamstring or tweaked his knee or something like that. Mm-hmm. Giovanni Bernard, I don't think was quite as fast as I thought he was going to be. But, you know, a lot of these guys, this draft class to me, unlike some of the other draft classes, it really lacks kind of the star power. Last year you had RG3 and Andrew Luck, and the year before that you had Cam Newton. The year before that you had, was Tebow the year before that? Or maybe the year before that?
Yes, I believe so.
He's around there somewhere. So you have all these guys that, you know, attract so much media attention. This year you don't really have a guy like that. And you have Te'o, but he's not the number one overall pick, you know, and then really the number one overall pick is up in the air, especially now that the Chiefs traded for Alex Smith. So, yeah. And, I mean, do you really think Geno Smith is worthy of a number one overall pick anyway? Probably not, you know. So, and who is? You have some offensive linemen, you know, it's kind of tricky right now. So one thing Marvin Lewis did say, though, in his press conference, which was a lot of fun to attend, by the way, Marvin Lewis actually smiled and laughed quite a bit. Crazy, but
that's good.
He said that the first position group that he had really started paying attention to was the offensive tackles, and he was really impressed with some. And this, you know, it's a really deep offensive tackle. You got Fluker, you got Fisher, you got, oh God, who are some of the other? Jokel. Yeah, you got a bunch of guys that they're probably going to go in the first round. So, you know, they made this whole thing with Andre Smith. If they don't re-sign him, they may be preparing for that right now. So, but I don't know. I mean, it was a good time. It was a good time. Jim Harbaugh was weird. You know, he just looked angry the entire time, and then he talked about Judge Judy.
The dude doesn't blink very much, does he?
He doesn't, I mean, no, and he just like had this
off in space quite often and quite.
Yeah. And when people ask him questions, they'll be saying something to him, and the way he listens to you is like this. He just looks pissed all the time. He looks like an intense guy, you know. But no one from the Ravens was there. John Harbaugh wasn't. Well, I mean, he was there at the Combine, but he didn't address the media. I think we heard from every single team except for them, and maybe a couple other teams. But you know, it was a good time. I think the coach press conferences and interviews were some of the highlights of my time there. So,
who were some of the guys that you heard a lot of buzz about from either the media members or perhaps any staff members from teams that you ran into? When
Tavon Austin ran his 40, everyone was buzzing about Tavon Austin. Some of the other really fast guys, I forget who ran what, but when they started doing unofficial times of like 4.25 and stuff like that, you know, the media room was buzzing with that, you know, just because last guy to really run that kind of 40 was Chris Johnson, and you're talking 4.25 is Deion Sanders' speed, which is That's world class.
Or Leon Sandcastle.
Yeah, or Leon Sandcastle. That was something that was disappointing. Leon Sandcastle was supposed to address the media at 5 on and then we got an email that said his plane was delayed, so he wasn't able to make it. But yeah, so you're talking about elite, the top of the elite class speed. So and that was a big deal. Margus Hunt was a lot of fun. He ran like a 4.67 or like a 4.6 flat maybe, which was faster than some of the running backs. Certainly faster than most of the tight ends, and he's like 6'8", 270 something pounds of just man monster. He's just huge, and his interview was really cool too. It was really neat to talk to him. So he talked a little bit about Estonia, his home country, and when someone asked what it was like, he said that we have roads and houses and internet and TV. He said it's not a third world country, but he said that if you're gonna visit Estonia, you have to go in July, I guess. So
okay,
but
good travel tip there.
Yeah. So if you're gonna go to Estonia, go in July. But no, he was cool. So, but yeah, I think the biggest buzz around the media room was when it came to some of the 40 times that the wide receivers and some of the running backs were posting.
So in regards to running backs and wide receivers, it's possible that the Bengals could take a couple of those guys high this year. What guys do you see them possibly looking at based on things you saw in person and or people you talk to, whether it be the players themselves, again, staff members, something like that?
Well, Jonathan Franklin could be a guy that they could target, and I think that he would be like a kind of a pure complement to Green Ellis. If they're looking for a guy to play on the same level as Green Ellis and then possibly take over, because Green Ellis is signed through 2014.
Right.
Eddie Lacy could be a guy, but you kind of have to wait till his pro day to see how he runs. But he was big. I mean, he was really big. And watching his game film, it's obvious that people had a hard time tackling. He could both run through and around people. So, and you have Mark Ingram and Trent Richardson kind of coming out of the same mold there. They're both first-round picks. So you think that he's probably a first-round pick as well. He's probably top of the class right now. But Jonathan Franklin, I doubt. While I liked Monty Ball and I think that he'll be successful in the NFL, I doubt that they'll go that route because you're just drafting another Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis type to play with Ben. There's just really no point in doing that. And then Giovanni Bernard could attract some attention. I think that, not to say that he was slow or anything like that, but I think that he ran like a 4.5, and I think that Eddie Lacy would probably run around the same speed. And Lacy's much bigger, so. I was kind of surprised. I was thinking he was going to be a little bit faster than that.
Him and Kenyon Barner from Oregon kind of surprised me with their times. Initially Barner looked like he ran a, in the 4.4s, which is good. And 4.5s is excellent as well.
Right.
I mean, I don't think I could do that, but Barner kind of surprised me. They seem maybe a bit more quick than fast type of guys.
And that's important too.
Maybe you can kind of talk about that.
Yeah, and that's important too. You have to have that quick first steps, and the ability to shift side to side to find a hole and to burst through it. But I think the thing that really and Green Ellis has that. Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis has that. What I think that Green Ellis doesn't have is that extra gear. That when he gets past the linebackers,
the long speed.
Right. When he gets past the linebackers, he's going as fast as he's going to go, and someone's going to catch up with him probably. What the Bengals, I think, are looking for is a guy who gets past the linebackers and he's gone. It's got that extra gear, he turns it on, he's got that long field speed, really cranks it up, and that's a thing that I think some third down backs, guys like that, they have. I think like the guys that are Green Ellis' size that have that, those are like your elite backs. So
are you getting the impression that they? I mean, this is kind of my thought process, but are you getting the impression that they want their running backs to be a running back that they potentially take this year to be a pass catcher?
I would hope so. I mean, Green Ellis, I don't remember. I don't know what his really stats are when it comes to catching the ball in the backfield, but to me, the Bengals haven't had a really good pass-catching running back since Chris Perry did it in 2005.
Right.
And then when they decided that they were going to let Chris Perry be the main guy, obviously that was disastrous, and Benson wasn't very good at catching the ball out of the backfield, and Bernard Scott may have been good at it, but he can't stay on the field because he's always hurt. I would hope that they want a guy because that just opens up any offense. I mean, we see what the Texans do with Arian Foster. Guys like when they put Percy Harvin in the backfield for the Vikings, he catches the ball in the backfield all the time, and that it opens up the new offense. It's a guy that is usually covered by a linebacker and when they're one-on-one and man-to-man, and they just most linebackers can't stick with running backs, especially when the linebacker is Ray Maluga. So
yeah. So being there and seeing these guys in person, talking to a couple of them, what do you see the team? What do you see the Bengals doing with their first few picks? I mean, do you kind of go the safety, linebacker, running back route in some order, or is there some other type of combination that you're seeing there?
To be honest with you, I have no idea. I mean, I think
I really don't.
Yeah, I think that like last year, I'm trying to think here. I don't know. I really don't know. They have several needs. They have a need at running back. They have a need at safety, linebacker, possibly offensive line. Here's what if they can't re-sign Andre Smith, I think the first overall pick is going to be attacked.
Yeah.
If they do re-sign Andre Smith, I just don't know. I mean, I would think that they would look at the positions, the best players available at all those positions, and then grab the best one. And if that's Kenny Vaccaro, if that's Eddie Lacy, if that's whatever, then that's who they take. But really, I think this all is going to depend on Andre Smith.
Mm-hmm.
If they can re-sign him, then it's going to be we'll have just to wait and see in the draft. If they can't re-sign him, I personally think they have to go they would have to go with an offensive tackle. There's so many good tackles that there's bound to be one available at number 21, and they'd have to grab that guy. So that's what I'm thinking right now. Yeah,
I agree with you. I think just kind of before the free agency madness starts, just looking at it, I would think that kind of common opinion would be, linebacker, safety, running back in some fashion, potentially cornerback as well, depending on how they do. That's another big position that they got to figure out in free agency if they want to get younger. I think a lot of people want them to get Adam Jones back. Terrence Newman's kind of a, lukewarm. He played well last year, but he's, in his mid-30s, I think. So, that could be a position there too. Well, let's switch gears, I guess, a little bit. Michael Johnson was tagged on Friday with the Bengals designated him as their franchise player. So, your thoughts on that? I'll kind of start off with mine if you don't mind. I've been kind of taking a little heat from our people that frequent our site, and I'm not the biggest fan of throwing a ton of money at Andre Smith. He definitely had an outstanding year last year, but really that's in his 4-year resume. That's the 1 year he's got to stand on. His 2011 year was okay. It was decent, but he played 14 games. He didn't play 16 games. Last year was really his first full complete season. He graded out well by all the the Pro Football Focuses and sites like that. But I still kind of have a trust issue with him. Just based on his past history, based on kind of what he's shown, and I kind of think they did the right thing by giving the tag to Michael Johnson. Now you kind of made an interesting point when we talked yesterday about Michael Johnson kind of being a little bit of a inconsistent guy himself, and a little bit of a 1-year wonder himself as well. So maybe talk about that a little bit, and your thoughts on the decision to tag him.
Okay. It's kind of frustrating because on one side you have, it's a passing league. The NFL is a passing league. You have to be able to rush the passer. You have to be able to protect the quarterback. So on one side you have a pass rusher. On the other side you have a right tackle that tries to stop the pass rusher, When it really comes down to it, I think that if it had been a guy like Geno Atkins that produced every single year, not just a contract year, it's a no-brainer. give the guy the franchise tag and then pay him whatever he wants. If he wants $1 billion, you find a way to give that man $1 billion.
Yeah,
because,
for him.
Right, because he can't leave. You can't let a guy who produces every year walk out the door. Michael Johnson produced last year. He was decent the year before. He was, fair the year before that. He did okay when he was in. Last year he was really good, but you can argue. You could say, well, hey, he took a few years to progress, and he's going to be this good from here on out. Or you could say he was motivated by the thought of getting a big paycheck, and he's got one now. And what motivated him the year before that? Why couldn't he do this the last couple of years? And that's what worries me. What worries me is that he was motivated by the thought of, it's my contract year, I'm going to get paid, so I'm going to play like crazy, when you should play like that every year.
Yeah.
So, and he's going to have the franchise tag this year, which means he's basically going to be an unrestricted free agent a year from now, so maybe he'll have another great year. But Andre Smith has progressively gotten better. And, I agree with everything you said about Smith. I have some trust issues with Smith as well. But I think the worst thing you can do when you have a rookie right guard, basically a rookie left guard as well, and Clint Bowling, he just had 4 games worth of experience from the year before. And then you're bouncing back and forth between Kyle Cook, he's good, and Trevor Robinson, who's a rookie, and then an aging left tackle who's the team leader. But I think the worst thing in the world is just to go grab a new offensive tackle, right tackle, and throw him in there when you really don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the right side of the line this year was kind of the strength of the team when running the ball. You had Andre Smith and Kevin Zeitler, who are both like brawlers when it comes to, they're maulers when it comes to run blocking. What if let's say they get DJ Fluker or something, what if they're just not good? And all of a sudden the run game goes downhill. There's a lot of pressure coming from that side. So, it's important to sign both of them. It really is. What I was hoping was going to happen was that they could re-sign Johnson to a long-term deal and then use the tag on Smith. That would have been the best case. The best case scenario actually would have been to re-sign both of them. But if they
the good news is with whoever they tagged this year, whether it was Smith or Johnson, they could technically tag them again next year.
Right, true.
Because you're right, both of these guys have kind of shown that they're prove-it players. They're guys that are, Michael Johnson, I think, what he put on 10 or 15 pounds of added muscle this last year, and obviously it paid dividends for him. Andre Smith, he started to kind of really turn his career around before 2011, based on, getting in shape and staying in shape. So, right. Whoever they had tagged, they could tag next year if they're kind of saying, hey, we're still a little wary about, what you're doing for our team. Are you kind of a shown to be a contract player, or what's the deal here? But either way, like I said, they could have gone. They could use the tag again next year if they wanted to.
And and the other thing is I understand it from a financial standpoint. You have, on one hand, you got a defensive end that's going to go out and test the market with other defensive ends that have proven that they can rush the passer. I think Cliff Averill is a free agent. I think you have some outside linebackers like Dwight Freeney that are going to they're going to cost quite a bit of money, even though Freeney's quite a bit older. But Michael Johnson's going to go out there, and teams throw big money at players that know how to rush the passer. So he goes out there and finds out he's worth a lot of money, and then the Bengals have to throw tons of money at him just to keep him around. It might be different at right tackle. Andre Smith might go out there and find out that he's worth less than he thinks he is, or that he's about the same. You know what I mean? Yeah. That the money the Bengals are offering me is about fair market price for me. So that it could be something like that too. But it is what it is. I was hoping that they could get Johnson re-signed to a multi-year deal, and then if they had to use the tag, they could use it on Smith. I'm kind of worried now about their ability to hang on to Smith. I wrote something about that. What does this mean for Andre Smith yesterday? And a lot of people commented that he's as good as gone. I don't necessarily think that's the truth.
We've seen it before. We've seen it before with.
Well, yeah, we have. I don't know if that's the truth, but what I do know is you cannot continue to draft people with a top. What was he, number 6?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't consider people to drop with a top 10 pick, train them over 4 years, and turn them into one of the best players at their position, and then let them leave. You just can't do that.
Yeah.
That's not how teams win. And like I think I said something to someone yesterday. I don't remember who I was talking to, but it kind of reminds me of like the Kentucky Wildcats when it comes to basketball. They bring on these all talented freshmen, and then every single one of their freshmen goes to the NBA after 1 year, and they're lucky. They're lucky if they they don't have the experience. They don't have the stuff that takes to win in March. So
yeah,
whoever is watching this video from Kentucky is going to find it.
they understand that, huh?
I live in northern Kentucky, and they're fanatics. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So
no, well, I mean, I think anybody who follows college basketball gets that analogy. Yeah. But yeah, I'm just so torn on Andre Smith. I liked what I saw last year. Obviously, you could argue that he was their best offensive lineman that they had last year. It's just which guy are you going to get if you pay him? Which guy is going to show up? Which guy's going to are you going to get the guy who's been in shape the last couple of years and has dedicated himself? Or are you going to get the guy from the first couple of years who's overweight, has foot injuries, all kinds of problems? And
the same goes for Michael Johnson too. Which are you going to get the guy who can pressure the quarterback and rack up 11.5 sacks, or you can get the guy who has 5 sacks and just
right? He's just there. Yeah, I mean that's what happened with Justin Smith, I think, too, when they designated him the franchise player. They did that, and I think he only had a small handful of sacks, and then they said, okay, well, you're obviously not as productive as we thought, and then he walked and had a great career in San Francisco. Yeah. So, it's again, both guys have their question marks, and you could sit there and say, well, Michael Johnson was used as an outside linebacker for a year, and that kind of wasted basically a year of his potential and his growth. But at the same time, he didn't really wow anybody until this contract year, like you said.
Right.
Andre Smith, same deal. So I think both guys could have been good options for the franchise tag, but at least we know they got one of them locked down, and both of those guys were priorities this year, and hopefully they'll be able to work something out long term with Michael Johnson instead of just relying on the franchise tag, and same thing with Andre Smith. I can say all I want about the negatives about him and the things that I have issues with him, but he was a productive player last year, and if they hang on to him, that's one less hole that they have to fill in the roster in the draft and in free agency. So, hopefully they can work something out with both those guys.
That's true. I mean, hopefully they can. It would be really nice to see both those guys back for 2013 and beyond. So. Yeah. We're just going to have to wait and see, I guess, though. I think the one thing that I was looking for is you heard all the news that Michael Johnson wants to stay in Cincinnati. He wants to be here. So I was thinking if there was going to be one player to sign, it would be him. So it was surprising when they used the tag on him. I used him to a deal. And we haven't heard anything about Andre Smith whatsoever. I mean, for all we know, they're drafting a contract right now. But, they might not be talking. I don't know. We just don't know right now. So, and then kind of switch gears again. It doesn't have to do with the Bengals, but it does. Joe Flacco is the highest paid player in NFL history after winning the Super Bowl and becoming the Super Bowl MVP, which he did not deserve to be the Super Bowl MVP. He got it because he's the quarterback. But he signed a 6-year deal worth over – I don't know what the exact –
It's absurd.
It's over $120 million. I think it's like 121.6 or something. It's just unbelievable.
I say absurd not because he's not necessarily totally deserving of that, but it's just like, I mean, Joe Flacco's the highest paid player in NFL history. That's just
it's not Tom Brady.
I mean,
it's not Peyton Manning. It's not Drew Brees. It's not some of the other guys who think it's Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
And he's out of University of Delaware. His first 2 seasons were exactly like Andy Dalton's first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
I mean, Andy Dalton, almost exactly the same. Andy Dalton was actually a little bit better when it came to
statistically.
Statistically, he was a little bit better.
Yeah.
Flacco obviously has a great arm. He's got a great defense backing him up. He's got Ray Rice in the backfield, which is going to help no matter what. He's got a great offensive line. So, and not to say that he played bad in the Super Bowl, because he didn't. He played well. But, I mean, who was the guy who ran back a punt?
Jacoby Jones.
Yeah, Jacoby Jones ran back a punt and he scored. Did he score 3 touchdowns in the Super Bowl? There's a punt return. I think
Oh,
he.
yeah, I think he scored 2. I think he
Passes.
scored 2.
2.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think he had a kick return and then a receiving touchdown where he caught a long ball and then he juked like 2 of the defenders that were right there and then kind of waltzed into the end zone. So yeah, I think he had at least 2. Yeah.
Yeah. So Joe Flacco won it. He's the quarterback. I'm happy for him. I'm glad the Ravens won. I was happy to see Ray Lewis leave on a high note like that.
Ugh.
I liked Ray Lewis. So, but yeah, it's just
That makes
weird
one
to
of us.
think. Well, okay. It's just weird to think that if somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh yeah, who's the highest paid player in the NFL? Is it Tom Brady? Is it Peyton Manning?" It's like, no, it's Joe Flacco. And then I would think most people would say, "Who the hell's Joe Flacco?"
Yeah.
So it's really different. So we'll be seeing Flacco for the next Wolf until he retires. And
it is good for that team though. I mean, if you remember, even though they've always been pretty competitive, I mean, there was a stretch, gosh, I want to say between like 04 to 07 where they were just, it was the Kyle Bowlers and, Steve McNair at the end of his career. And, I mean, they just were getting guys that were just like, huh. And all they did was rely on their defense.
Yeah.
And now they got a guy that they, he say what you want about him. He played well in the postseason, and he got him their second title. So it's good for them. I do think that handicaps them a little bit in terms of their salary cap situation because they've really got to work some magic to try and hang on to some of these big pieces that they have, and it looks like they're not going to be able to. But they have their quarterback. That's the most important thing for them, and they should be pretty competitive going forward.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I said, when they're negotiating a new contract with Flacco, I'm thinking like, oh, he'll get a lot of money. He's going to get a lot of money. I never thought he would be the highest paid player in NFL history, though, and I didn't even think that was going to come close.
Yeah, I didn't think that was going to happen either.
But and the funny thing about it too is, I don't know if it still rings true that the Bengals have a good defense. They've had a good defense for a while. But for a long time, Joe Flacco really struggled against the Bengals, more so than he did anyone else,
Yep.
And we kind of see this trend shifting where obviously the Ravens coming off a Super Bowl win, they're kind of top dogs in the AFC North, and now you have the Bengals kind of fighting back and forth with the Steelers to see who's going to be number 2. And the Steelers have their own salary cap issues that Ben Roethlisberger isn't getting younger. His offensive line is still really bad. He's getting banged up all the time, and I don't think it's unreasonable to say that the Bengals are number 2 right now, and the Steelers went 8-8, the Bengals went 10-6. So I think it's I think that the Bengals are where they need to be right now.
Yeah.
They're where they need to be right now, and the Browns are with the coaching hires they made, they're going to be scary.
That team's going to be pretty good. I don't think so much this year. But give them a year or two. If they figure out their quarterback situation, they think Whedon's their guy, or if they get another guy, I mean, that could be a good team in a little bit. And not necessarily this year, but still pretty soon. I mean, probably by 2014, 2015. I mean, that team could really be, and that's kind of the cycle too. I mean, if you're bad for a while, you keep getting these high picks, you keep using. Those high picks on skill positions and things like that. I mean, you're gonna end up building a pretty quality team. And I kind of hate to say that was kind of the Bengals' MO for a while. And they weren't doing so well, and then they got a couple of high picks, and they really hit the lottery in 2011 with their guys. But that's a team to watch out for, most definitely. That's a good point. Real quick, we've kind of touched on a lot of topics, but of that $50+ million that the Bengals have to spend in free agency, they've spent about what is it, 11? Oh, definitely over 11 on Michael Johnson at least for the franchise tag. How much of that do you see them spending this year, either towards outside free agents, their own guys? Restructuring contracts. I mean, do you see them kind of pushing the limit? Do you see them giving themselves about a $5 to $10 million cushion going into next year? What do you kind of see them doing?
They're not big money spenders, and the forced spending thing doesn't require them to spend all that money this year.
Right.
I think that they're going to focus on re-signing their own guys. I think they're really going to turn up the heat on continuing to negotiate with Johnson. I think they'll negotiate with Smith. I think they need to bring back Adam Jones, and I would bring back Terrence Newman as well. They might look at free agency for a couple positions. Maybe they'll bring in another free agent safety. Obviously they'll use that money to sign their draft picks this year. I wouldn't be surprised though that if they went, I wouldn't be surprised if they went into 2013 having saved, $10 to $15 million to carry over to next year. Because then you also got guys, they could extend Geno Atkins this year. And another thing that we didn't really talk about when it comes to the draft is now you have Carlos Dunlap and Michael Johnson are going to be unrestricted free agents before 2014. And so they could think about defensive end. They may bring in another defensive end in free agency. They could extend Dunlap, stuff like that. So I think that's going to go towards their own people, making sure their own guys are here for the long haul.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of see the same thing. As much as I'd like to think they have an ace up their sleeve and they want to make a big splash, I just kind of think, hey, that this was their plan for the last couple of years. They feel that they've built a pretty good little nucleus of young talent. They want to keep that talent, and they feel that a lot of those guys are on the upswing in terms of entering the prime of their careers, and they want to lock those people down. And I think they'll do a couple of things in terms of outside guys. I think, like you said, I think safety is probably a free agent spot that they might address. It just based on how they value that position and how Mike Zimmer seems to like experience at that position. They could still draft a guy, but I don't know. I don't see a very high pick there. But stranger things have happened, and as I said, I think they'll probably spend quite a bit of that money, but they'll have quite a bit of it to move towards next year, and I think now they're able to roll over quite a bit of that money into the next year and things like that. So I think they'll do that.
And that's fine. I see them doing that as well. I think the one thing that they may want to take a look at though is the teams that have the most success. They're all in cap trouble. Because they spend their money. You have the Patriots had to restructure their deal with Tom Brady. I don't ever want to compare the Bengals to the Cowboys because I hate the Cowboys, but the Cowboys are in kind of the same boat. The Steelers are in the same boat. The Ravens are in the same boat. Yep. The teams that are in cap trouble because they pay their guys that they need to stay there.
And with the exception of you mentioned Steelers, Ravens, Cowboys, and what was the other team you mentioned?
Patriots.
Yeah. I mean, what's a common theme of three of those four teams? I mean, two of them have won Super Bowls in the last couple of years, and one of them has been to the Super Bowl in the last handful of years. So you're right. I mean, you got to spend money to one. You got to spend it to make it. So I mean, you spend money. Teams, people are going to buy tickets to see your product and things like that. But two, you spend the money and you spend it right. You're going to get quality players in the door, and your team's going to be improved. And that's what I hope to see from them. As much as I'd like to see a Greg Jennings, potentially even a Reggie Bush or Donnell Ellerbe or any of these guys. I mean, those are some of the bigger names out there. I'd like to see them, but I don't know that happens. But there's still a lot of guys that could come in and fill a lot of roster holes that they have for relatively decent price, and well, hopefully they're able to do something there.
Yeah, hopefully they can.
Do you hear my dog crying in the background?
Yeah. I think he wants you to pay attention.
He wants attention.
All right, well, go pay attention to your dog, and we'll go from there. Thanks for watching, and make sure you catch some. We're going to do these a lot more often, so make sure you catch us next time. For Anthony Cosenza, I'm Jason Garrison. Hoo day.
Hoo day. Thanks.
Thanks.